They call him Mayor Pete, but Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Welcome. Candidate number 4. Mayor Pete Buttigieg, thank you so much. Your opening remarks. Thank you. Your opening remarks, sir.
Great. I'll be brief. My name is Pete Buttigieg. I'm the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. I'm running for president, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here. I'm thankful to President Johnson and to the NAACP leadership for everything that you do to make our country a more just place. I also want to recognize Apostle Michael Patton, president of our own South Bend chapter, where I am a subscribing Silver Life member. I've been reminded that there are some other levels, so I'm going to do my best for the NAACP because the mission is so important. Running for president because I think America is running out of time. I am worried that even now we may be underreacting to the situation that we're in. And it is not just the racism and the corruption that is emanating from this White House. It is the conditions that made a White House like this possible. You don't even get a president like this. A president like this doesn't even come within cheating distance of the Oval Office if everything's going along okay in our country. And that is why we will not and cannot win if our message as a Democratic Party is that we're just going to go back to normal. My generation experienced why normal doesn't work, being on the business end of climate change, being on the business end of an economy where we may be the first generation in American history to do worse than our parents if nothing changes. But I don't need to tell black Americans about why the old normal isn't going to work. It is the crisis of our time. White supremacy brought this nation to its knees once. I believe that systemic racism is the thing that could unravel the American project if we do not confront it. It is why I've proposed that with as much ambition as went into the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe after World War II,
Time for Q&A.
we undertake a Douglas Plan. I'm already out of time?
Yeah, you're already out.
All right, we'll get to talk about it in the Q&A. Thank you for having me.
Mayor Pete, if you will. Police-involved abuses in South Bend have been an albatross around your neck recently. Please tell us how you would, as president, fix this and other police abuses that arise in this nation.
Let me tell you about share the journey that South Bend has been on. When I took office, we had no recognizable promotion or accountability system for promotions in the department. We couldn't even find and publish numbers on cases involving use of force. So we started doing that. We elevated accountability. I saw to it that the board that makes decisions about hiring and firing officers in our city had minority representation and elevated the level of accountability. And we undertook a number of measures so that there was greater police accountability and better relations. We are still on that journey, and it is not done. As president, I am determined to have a Department of Justice that supports cities doing the right thing and compels police departments to do the right thing, because as long as there is a wall of mistrust between communities of color and police departments, everyone is worse off. And I'll tell you, under President Obama, we had resources in the Department of Justice, things like a collaborative reform service process that would help us undertake these reforms. Needless to say, the Department of Justice in this administration has not shown a lot of interest in supporting cities trying to move the ball forward when it comes to police accountability, police use of force, and eliminating racial discrimination from the justice system.
Your top-tier staff does not reflect the diversity of America. If elected president, how would you construct the racial makeup of your cabinet and staff?
So I would point to, first of all, the diversity of the administration that we have built in South Bend. By appointing people who reflect our community, we've not only had better representation, but we've made better decisions. And that feeds upon itself. I'll give you an example. I appointed the first African-American female corporation counsel in the history of the city. And she went on to build a Department of Law for us, for the city. That was one of the most diverse and excellent in our administration. So when she moved on to become the first African-American magistrate judge in our county, she had a successor from within the department, also African-American, who has in turn gone on to be the first African-American female head of the Bar Association in our county. We are building a campaign team rapidly as we speak, and we are building a team that will reflect the diversity both of the country and party that we seek to represent and of the administration that I seek to serve, and I consider it extremely important.
So how long is that building going to take?
It's underway right now, and we will publish numbers that will demonstrate the diversity of our team.
Okay. People want to know, what is the balance to raising the minimum wage without raising the cost of products?
The reality is every time they have told us that raising the minimum wage would be consumed by inflation, and it's just not true. We are better off when there is a higher minimum wage. And, you know, the House of Representatives last week passed a $15 minimum wage. And because we were talking about the president's racist attacks on 4 congresswomen, I fear that not enough attention went to what those congresswomen were working on, including the minimum wage increase. We got to be able to do both. We got to be able to name and confront racist behavior by this president and have a spotlight on our agenda that is making people better off, especially something like the minimum wage that disproportionately benefits Americans of color but makes the whole country better off. And we've got to make sure that there is a political penalty when Senate Republicans block this measure from being considered when it goes from the House to the Senate.
What is your plan to eradicate or lower student loan debt?
So this one's personal for us. We got 6-figure student loan debt. I married a teacher, and I'm glad I did, but we're living with a lot of debt. It's why we need to expand opportunities, first of all, to make it more affordable on the front end, expanding Pell Grants, pressing states to make college more affordable, and we can deliver debt-free college for low and middle-income students. We can also, on the back end, have a more generous public service loan forgiveness program. And when it comes to these for-profit colleges, which, by the way, target veterans and people of color, they have basically turned the Department of Education into a predatory lender. And so when we're looking at eradicating debt, we should begin with the debt run up by the colleges that did not deliver for their students. Last thing I want to mention is that as important as it is to make college more affordable, we have to make it more affordable to not go to college in this country. And that is one of the reasons why the work that's being done on the minimum wage is so important. Because you should be able to afford to live well as a working American, whether you have a college degree or not.
And in the time remaining, what is your black agenda?
So, if you want the 45-minute version, I would urge you to go to PictureAmerica.com and read about the Douglas Plan. But in short, it is this. We have learned the hard way as a country that if you take a racist structure or policy and you replace it with a neutral one, that is not enough to deliver justice and equality because harms compound. In the same way that $1 saved compounds through the years because of interest, the same thing is true of $1 stolen. And if we want to truly make America whole, make America equal, then we need to work across every area in which black Americans and white Americans might as well be living in a different country. In health, that means supporting health equity zones and training and requiring that medical workforces do not discount the pain of a black female patient, for example, which helps to explain why maternal mortality is higher for black women. In education, it means massively expanding access to Title I funds and supporting the HBCUs and minority-serving institutions that are training the doctors and the lawyers and the presidents of tomorrow. In home ownership, it means funding a new version, a kind of 21st century community homestead act that would help people stay in their own neighborhoods that are rapidly gentrifying by funding them to acquire properties in neighborhoods that have been historically redlined, because we need to stabilize those neighborhoods. When it comes to criminal justice, we need to cut, and we can do this without crime going up, we need to cut incarceration by 50%. And we're pointing to the clock. I see we're running out of time, but just very quickly, just because a lot of the incarceration is happening at the state level doesn't mean the federal government can't lead on this. By eliminating mandatory minimums, by supporting alternatives to incarceration, by ending incarceration as a response to drug possession, by establishing a clemency commission that does lead the way from the federal side, we can and must do this in our time. among many other measures we have to undertake so that the criminal justice system is actually serving up justice. These are some of the elements of our Douglas plan, which I contend is the most comprehensive yet offered by a 2020 candidate to tackle systemic racism and serve Black America.
123 in closing.
All right. So, again, there is a lot more detail to these proposals that I hope you will take time to familiarize yourself with by going to peteforamerica.com and learning about our message. We are taking this message everywhere, and I also invite you to watch me talk about systemic racism, not only when I am speaking to mostly Black audiences, but when I am speaking to mostly white audiences. As an urban mayor of a diverse city seeking to do the right thing, I have also encountered the limits and the pressures of our lack nationwide of systems and structures that make it possible for everyone to succeed. It took intention to create the kinds of inequalities we're living through right now. It will therefore take intention and resources to reverse those inequalities, and I am determined to do that because if we do not tackle systemic racism in my lifetime, I am convinced that it will unravel the American project in my lifetime. I am committed to deliver, and I trust that you will see me both in our proposals and in the way we run this campaign live up to that commitment all the way to the nomination and to the White House. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for having me today.
Pete Buttigieg, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much. Candidate number 4, Pete Buttigieg. All right.